Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for some more trending tidbits from the world of psychology?
Always.
Okay, so get this. There's some new research suggesting that how prone you are to boredom, how easily you get bored,
Right.
might actually be linked to how your brain handles anxiety.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're diving into a study published in Frontiers in Psychology. They were looking at college students specifically.
Okay.
And, well, college students are famous for, pulling all-nighters and all that.
Yeah.
But apparently also they're known for struggling with anxiety.
It's true. College can be a really high pressure environment.
Yeah.
So much going on. This research actually dives into some fascinating connections between boredom, what researchers are calling our brain's brake system.
Brain's brake system.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
And how we experience anxiety.
Tell me more about this research. What kind of students were they looking at?
So they specifically focused on this thing called boredom proneness,
Okay.
which is, more than just disliking a boring lecture, right?
Yeah,
We've all been there.
definitely.
This is about people who chronically, just feel understimulated,
Right.
lacking meaningful goals, and as a result, they're experiencing all these negative emotions.
So it's like a constant feeling of wah-wah,
Yeah,
even when there's, stuff happening around you.
exactly.
But how does that tie into anxiety? Because college students, they definitely have a lot on their plates.
Right.
So it seems kind of counterintuitive that boredom would be a major factor.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah,
That's part of what makes this research so interesting.
I see, yeah.
Let's not forget, too, almost half of college students report experiencing some level of anxiety.
Really?
And that's from a pretty substantial report, the Report on National Mental Health Development in China, 2021-2022.
Wow, okay. So that's a significant number.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense. The pressure's really on.
Yeah.
So where does this whole brake system thing come in?
Well, researchers call it the behavioral inhibition system,
Okay.
or BIS for short. Think of it kind of like your brain's internal pause button.
Oh, okay.
It makes you hesitate before acting when you sense any potential danger or punishment.
Okay, so it's like that feeling you get when you're about to do something risky.
Yes.
And your gut is saying, hold on a second, are you sure about this?
Exactly. Yeah, maybe not.
Right.
And this BIS, it plays a big role in anxiety. There's this model called the susceptibility stress model,
Okay.
and it basically says people with a more sensitive brake system
Right.
might be more vulnerable to anxiety triggers.
Interesting. So someone with a super sensitive BIS is hitting the brakes all the time,
Yeah,
even for small bumps in the road, so to speak.
exactly.
And that can lead to anxiety.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
So here's where the connection to boredom gets really interesting.
Okay.
This study found that people who are prone to boredom actually have a less sensitive DIS.
Wait, so if you're easily bored, your brain's brake system is actually weaker.
Yeah.
That seems completely backwards. Wouldn't those folks be more anxious, always looking for the next exciting thing?
Yeah, you would think so, right?
Yeah.
But what the researchers are suggesting is that boredom might actually lead to less anxiety because it kind of pushes people to seek out stimulation,
Oh, okay.
which
Yeah.
actually reduces their inhibition.
So it's like they're less likely to hit the brakes on new experiences
Exactly.
because they're bored.
Yes.
So in a way, boredom is kind of like this catalyst for action, pushing people to find new and interesting things to do,
Right.
which ultimately helps them manage their anxiety.
It's one way to look at it.
Okay.
But there's another layer to this.
Okay.
The BIS actually has something called a masking effect.
A masking effect.
It means that even though boredom might be pushing someone towards activities that, reduce anxiety, their BIS might be simultaneously triggering anxiety in other situations.
Hold on. So a masking effect, what does that actually mean?
So it's not a simple one-to-one relationship. There's this complex interplay of factors at play.
Okay, so it's kind of like having one foot on the gas and the other on the brake at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
But we've been talking about averages here. What about individual differences? Because everyone experiences boredom and anxiety differently, right?
Absolutely. And that's why the researchers went a step further and they looked at different personality types within the student group using something called person-centered analysis.
Person-centered analysis.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds intriguing.
So instead of just looking at the group as a whole,
Right.
they looked for patterns in how individual students scored on, boredom proneness and BIS sensitivity.
Got it.
And guess what?
What?
They found 3 distinct personality types.
Ooh, I love when research gets into the nitty-gritty like that. What were the types?
Okay, so there was the the high boredom, low inhibition group.
Okay.
Those are the folks who get bored easily, right?
Yeah.
And also have a less sensitive brake system. Then there was a moderate boredom, moderate inhibition group, which is pretty much what it sounds like.
Makes sense.
But here's the curveball.
Okay.
They also found a low boredom, high inhibition group.
Low boredom, but high inhibition. That's interesting. You'd think if you don't get bored easily, you wouldn't struggle as much with anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
But the study actually found that this group experienced the most anxiety.
Wow, that's surprising. What's the thinking behind that?
So the researchers proposed that those with a really, really strong brake system, even if they don't get bored easily, might actually struggle more with emotional regulation.
So they're not necessarily seeking out stimulation all the time,
Right.
but when they are bored, their anxiety just goes through the roof.
Yes, because that brake system is on a high alert.
Interesting. It really highlights the complexity of the boredom-anxiety connection
It does.
and how personal tendencies play such a huge role. Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we were getting into all that exciting stuff about neurofeedback and AI.
Yeah.
But we were talking about how this brake system in our brains, the BIS, is tied to anxiety.
Exactly. Yeah. Remember, the BIS is like constantly scanning, right?
Right.
For anything that could be a threat.
Okay.
And when it picks up on those signals like uncertainty or potential danger,
Right.
it triggers that feeling of, hold on, maybe not.
Right, like that little internal alarm bell going off.
Exactly.
So how does this actually play out in real life? Like, what kind of situations might trigger that BIS response, especially for folks who, have a more sensitive brake system?
Well, think about social situations.
Okay.
Someone with a highly sensitive BIS might hesitate to join a conversation,
Right.
worried about saying the wrong thing or being judged.
Ah, so it's not just about, like, physical danger, but also those social anxieties that can really hold people back.
Exactly. Or imagine a work presentation. Someone with a strong BIS might overthink every single detail,
Right.
worry about potential criticisms,
Sure.
and even avoid volunteering for presentations altogether.
Yeah, makes sense. So that brake system, while, helpful in some situations, can really put a damper on things if it's overly sensitive.
Definitely.
But we were also talking about how boredom plays into all of this.
Right.
How can something as, seemingly harmless as boredom trigger the BIS?
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Boredom itself isn't a threat in the traditional sense,
Right.
but it does create this state of uncertainty.
Yeah, uncertainty. How so?
Well, when we're bored, we lack clear goals or engaging activities.
Right.
It's like our brain is saying, hey, something's not right here.
It's going on.
Yeah, we need stimulation, we need a plan.
Yeah.
And that lack of direction,
Right.
that feeling of being adrift, can actually trigger the BIS.
So it's like our brain is interpreting boredom as a warning sign.
Yes.
Like something is off
Yeah,
and we need to take action.
that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And this ties back to what we were discussing earlier
Okay.
about those who are prone to boredom potentially experiencing less anxiety overall.
Right.
They're more likely to act on that need for stimulation,
Yeah.
to find engaging activities and shake off that uncertainty.
So instead of getting stuck in that loop of, I'm bored, I'm anxious, I don't know what to do,
Exactly.
they're out there exploring new things, pursuing their interests, and basically giving their BIS a good workout in the process.
Precisely.
Okay.
And in a way, that can be a protective factor
I see.
against getting bogged down by excessive anxiety.
This is such a fascinating perspective shift. Instead of viewing boredom as something like negative to avoid at all costs,
Right?
maybe we should actually embrace it as an opportunity to challenge ourselves, get creative, and explore new possibilities.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it actually reminds me of something we often see in creative fields. A lot of artists, writers, musicians, entrepreneurs, they talk about how boredom actually fuels their creativity.
Oh, interesting. It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
When you're bored, you're more likely to think outside the box,
Right.
come up with innovative solutions, ideas.
Exactly. But of course, not all boredom is created equal, right?
Right.
There's a difference between that kind of boredom that sparks creativity
Yeah.
and that soul-crushing, I can't even get off the couch boredom.
Right, like that Sunday afternoon feeling where you're just scrolling endlessly through social media,
Yes.
not really engaged with anything.
Exactly.
So how do we differentiate between those types of boredom And more importantly, how can we manage those times when boredom starts to feel more like a burden than a catalyst?
Well, that's where understanding your own boredom profile comes in.
Okay, yeah.
Remember we were talking about those different personality types?
Right.
Knowing your tendencies, whether you thrive on novelty or you prefer routine, whether you tend to overthink or just jump into action,
Yeah.
can help you anticipate and manage those boredom-induced anxieties.
So it's all about self-awareness and using that knowledge to create strategies that work for you.
Exactly.
What are some practical tips that listeners can start using today to manage those moments when boredom starts to feel overwhelming or leads to anxiety?
Well, one of the most effective strategies is to actually have a plan.
Okay.
Think about those situations where you typically get bored,
Okay.
long commutes, waiting rooms,
Oh, yeah, the worst.
evenings at home with nothing planned,
Right.
and then have a boredom survival kit ready to go.
I like that.
You know, a good book, a podcast you've been meaning to catch up on,
Oh, yeah.
that craft project you keep putting off.
Right.
Anything that sparks your interest and gets you engaged.
So like having that mental toolbox filled with boredom-busting activities.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to get creative.
Yeah.
Maybe you start a conversation with a stranger.
Right.
Try a new recipe.
Yeah.
Or simply take a different route on your walk.
I love that.
It's all about shaking things up and finding those little pockets of novelty in your everyday life.
Definitely.
But what about those times when boredom sneaks up on you? You're stuck in a long meeting,
Yeah.
waiting for a delayed flight. Those situations where you can't really pull out your boredom survival kit.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do then?
Well, that's where mindfulness comes in.
Okay.
Instead of letting those feelings of boredom and restlessness escalate, try shifting your focus to the present moment.
So instead of getting lost in those I'm so bored thoughts, try to tune into your senses.
Yes.
Notice the sights, the sounds, and the sensations around you.
Exactly. Focus on your breath, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the
Yep.
temperature of the air on your skin.
Okay.
These simple acts of mindfulness, they can really help.
Yeah.
Create a sense of calm amidst the boredom and prevent those anxious thoughts from spiraling out of control.
It's like hitting the pause button on that BIS alarm system.
That's a great analogy.
Good.
And the more you practice mindfulness, the more skilled you become at managing those boredom-induced anxieties in the moment.
This is all so helpful. So we've got planning ahead
Yeah.
and mindfulness in our boredom-busting toolbox.
Yeah.
Are there any other strategies that we should have on hand?
Well, sometimes boredom can actually be a sign that we're not fully engaged in our lives,
Oh, okay.
that we've gotten a bit too comfortable in our routines.
Oh, I like that. It's like boredom is a signal, a nudge from our inner selves
Yeah.
saying, hey, there's more to life than this.
Yes.
Let's shake things up.
Exactly. And this can be a great opportunity for self-reflection.
Okay.
You know, ask yourself, what truly brings me joy?
Yeah.
What activities make me feel energized and alive?
Right.
Are there any passions I've neglected that I could rekindle?
So instead of dreading boredom,
Mm-hmm.
we can view it as a chance to reconnect with ourselves,
Yeah.
explore new interests,
Exactly.
maybe even discover hidden talents or passions we didn't know we had.
Exactly. And when we're living in alignment with our values,
Mhm.
pursuing those things that light us up,
Yeah.
boredom becomes less of an issue
Okay.
because we're intrinsically motivated and engaged.
This is such a powerful reframing of boredom. It's not the enemy. It's a messenger, a guide,
Right.
an opportunity for growth and discovery.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And as we wrap up this part of our conversation, I want you to think about your own personal boredom profile.
Okay.
What are your strengths and challenges when it comes to managing boredom?
Mm.
What strategies resonate most with you?
Right.
And most importantly, how can you use this understanding to create a more balanced, fulfilling, and less anxious life?
These are such great questions to ponder. We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
From understanding that fascinating brake system in our brains
Right.
to these practical tips for navigating boredom in a way that actually enhances our lives.
It's amazing.
And in our final part,
yes.
we'll explore that cutting-edge world of neurofeedback and AI,
Exactly.
and how those innovations are paving the way for even more personalized and effective approaches to managing anxiety.
Yes, stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm still blown away by all those insights about our brains and boredom.
Me too.
Who knew it could be so fascinating?
I know, right?
But before we wrap up, you mentioned some truly futuristic stuff
Yes.
on the horizon
Yeah.
for anxiety management.
Right.
Can't wait to hear more about that.
Okay, so we were just starting to touch on the incredible potential of neurofeedback training and artificial intelligence.
Okay, so let's start with neurofeedback.
Okay.
You were saying it lets people actually see and control their brainwave activity.
Yeah.
How does that even work?
Okay, so imagine you're watching a movie of your own brainwaves playing out on a screen. With neurofeedback, that's essentially what's happening.
Wow.
Sensors are placed on your scalp to pick up on those electrical signals,
Right.
and they're translated into visual or auditory feedback.
So you're literally watching your brain in action.
Yes.
That's so wild. What does that look like in practice?
It could be like a graph that shows peaks and valleys,
Okay.
representing the intensity of different brainwaves.
Right.
Or it might be like a game where you control a character's movements using your brainwaves.
Wow. So you're not just like passively observing, you're actually interacting with your brain waves.
Exactly.
But how does that translate to managing anxiety?
So the idea is that over time you can learn to recognize the patterns that are associated with anxiety.
Okay.
For example, you might notice that certain brainwaves spike when you're feeling stressed.
Okay.
And then with practice, you can learn to consciously shift those patterns, calming your brain down in those moments.
So it's kind of like biofeedback, but for your brain.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
And the research on neurofeedback is like really promising.
Oh, boy.
It's showing positive results for like a range of anxiety-related issues,
Okay.
from generalized anxiety to social anxiety
Okay.
to PTSD.
Wow, that's incredible. It seems like there's so much potential for this technology to really personalize mental health care.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another exciting frontier, artificial intelligence.
Okay, I'll admit, AI for anxiety still sounds a little bit like science fiction to me.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But it's already happening.
Wow.
Researchers are developing AI algorithms that can analyze all sorts of data.
Okay.
Your voice patterns,
Right.
your facial expressions, even your physiological data like heart rate and sleep patterns,
Wow.
to detect those subtle signs of anxiety that we might not even be aware of ourselves.
So it's like having a super sensitive anxiety detector on call 24/7.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, good.
And the beauty of AI is that it can then use that information to tailor personalized interventions.
Right.
So imagine an app that notices that you're showing signs of stress,
Okay.
and it recommends some breathing exercises or a guided meditation that's specifically designed to address your current state.
That would be incredible. Like having a personalized anxiety coach right in your pocket.
Exactly. And AI could also play a huge role in early detection and intervention.
Oh, okay.
If these algorithms can pick up on those subtle warning signs, right, before anxiety becomes a major issue, it could really transform how we approach mental health care.
This is all so mind-blowing. It seems like we're on the verge of a real paradigm shift in how we understand and manage anxiety.
I completely agree. And it all circles back to those fundamental principles we've been discussing throughout our conversation today.
Yeah.
The importance of understanding our own individual tendencies, the power of mindfulness, and that fascinating connection between boredom and our brain's brake system.
It's incredible to think that something as seemingly simple as boredom can hold so many clues to understanding our mental well-being.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up our exploration of these trending tidbits,
Yeah.
I'd like to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
As these new technologies emerge,
Yeah.
how can we ensure that they are used ethically and responsibly?
That's a great question.
Yeah. How can we make these innovations accessible to everyone who needs them?
Those are such crucial questions.
Yeah,
Technology has the potential to be a powerful tool for positive change,
it does.
but it's up to all of us to guide its development
Yes.
and ensure that it truly serves humanity in a meaningful way.
Well said. And remember, even as technology advances, those foundational skills,
Right.
self-awareness, mindfulness, and the ability to manage those inevitable moments of boredom, those will always be essential.
This has been such an enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise and for opening our eyes to this fascinating world of boredom, inhibition, and anxiety.
It's been my pleasure. And to all of our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing those moments of boredom. You never know where they might lead you.